In this lesson, we will take our surface bodies of our oil pan and trim the various surfaces referencing the gear housing, then merge them together using the Knit Surface tool. So in a very similar format that we've been following throughout this tutorial, we're going to have our two files open, which are available for this lesson. One's the lesson file and one's the completed file. We're going to use the completed file as a reference, so when we put together our surface options and some of the other tools we're going to put together into our lesson file, we have something to refer to see what the results are going to look like. So let's go to our completed model and take a look at what we're going to be using and what we're going to be putting together for this lesson. If we open up our oil pan items folder in here, we've already completed our surface loft, and we have our planer surface, which takes care of the bottom cap of our oil pan. Now we're going to do an oil pan trim. So what we have in here is surfaces are kind of sticking into each other here. We need to trim this out. What we want to do is we want to make sure we have an edge, a consistent edge between our surface bodies that we have here and not have walls that stick up and impeding our progress, you might say. So with our oil pan trim 1, what we're going to do is we're going to use this surface body here to trim out that surface body of our oil pan lofted surface. And then with our oil pan 2, we're going to go ahead and use this surface over here as a trim tool to trim out this surface here of our gearbox, of our housing. So to show you how that works, we're going to trim the top first, and then we're going to trim the inside second. So if we pull that down just a little bit further, you can see how that works. And they're very simple tools. And as long as you set this up correctly, and they have just a few options with them, it actually comes out really, really good. And what you have is a continuous surface, transitioning from this housing surface to the oil pan surface, and so on and so forth. So our oil pan knit, that's going to be the last thing we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and knit these two surface bodies together, the one that makes up the bottom cap and the one that makes up the walls of our oil pan. If we move that down, you can see that blue line is going to turn black, which means, again, it's going to be continuous, and it's going to create a single surface body out of those two. So when we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go from 7 surface bodies here to 6. So if we go ahead and move that down, you can see what that does actually create 6 surface bodies. So that's our ultimate goal, is to take our surface model and make a solid model out of it. So while we're working with this, we're going to have surface bodies, but when we're all done with this, when we've already thickened it, we should have no surface bodies left. Okay, with that said, let's go to our lesson model. Let's start our lesson for the day. Let's go ahead and actually just enter our surface trim tool. And you'll find that up on your Surfaces tab on the Command Manager. What you want to do is you want to go to Trim Surface up here. So we have a couple different choices. We talked about this before. We have Standard and Mutual. Standard allows you to use lines, vertices, probably not vertices, but lines and planes and other elements that may not be surface related in order to provide a trim surface. Or we can do Mutual, which allows us to strictly stay within the surfacing environment of making our trims. So it's going to ask us for the surfaces. We're going to have to select 2 surfaces. We're going to have to select the surface that we want to have trimmed, and our trim tool. We're going to go ahead and select both of those. And then we have a choice here between keep selections and remove selections. Let's go and do remove selections. That's going to be the default. Let's go and click inside of this area. And when you do that, you're going to see a red or yellow preview line. And that yellow preview line can be manipulated by these options down here. Now, this is actually fairly straightforward, and there's no ambiguity here, but if we were to do something like maybe a square window on a curved surface, a square cut on a curved surface, then you have the ability to either go natural, where the lines will extend maybe in a different direction, maybe along the curvature of the curve, or you could do linear, where the lines that are going to be split will be proceeding along the rectangular cut that might be in there. Can't really demonstrate that here, but when you go to the split all option, it gives you all those surfaces that you could actually select in here. But for now, what we have in here, we have 2 different things that we can actually trim out, actually 3 different things. But what we're concentrating here on is the oil pan wall. So we could either trim out the top or trim out the bottom. We could do remove selections or keep selections. So let's go ahead and do what we really want to do. We just want to remove selections, and we want to remove that top. Let's go and click that. You go to the green check mark, and now we have that out. If you go back into that and go back and choose the other option where we want to keep selections, And if we go ahead and go to the green check mark, what we're going to do is we're going to miss the bottom. So you can see that there's some options in here that we could use. Of course, that last option is not really what we want. But if we select this rather than the top, then we'll get what we want. We're going to keep the selections. We're going to keep the top and get rid of the bottom. I'm sorry, we're going to get rid of the top and keep the bottom, which is what we want. So that's a trim surface tool. Let's go ahead and rename that the way it's named in our completed model, which is going to be Oil Pan Trim 1. So let's go ahead and see if we can get that to rename here. There we go. So Oil Pan Trim 1. And we're going to go ahead and borrow that name. We're going to use that on our second trim. So our second trim, we're going to be using this as our reference. We're going to trim out this section in here so that it's going to be continuous from this surface into the oil pan. So let's do that. Let's go back to our trim surface command. And we're going to keep mutual. We're going to click the surfaces we want to use within our trim tools. And we're going to go ahead and remove selections. And what we're going to do, and you can see that yellow line in there, we can't really manipulate it by going between linear and natural. And we can unclick the split all. The thing about the split all option, if we get a chance to show this in a subsequent tutorial, the split all option is actually fairly convenient because it shows you all the options of all the surfaces that are created either by the natural or the linear selection. And you can select multiple items at the same time. So remove selections, we're going to go and remove the surface in here. And if we right click on the mouse, now it's open and ready to go. So it's going to be continuous. Once we knit this together, it will be continuous, going from that surface, transitioning to the surface of our oil pan wall, all the way down to the oil pan bottom where the cap is. So let's go ahead and merge some of this. Our next step is going to go ahead and merge this. This is a second time we've used the merge tool. It's the first time the merge tool is going to be incorporated into our feature manager design tree. What we want to do is we want to create one single surface body for our oil pan. And you notice if we go up to our surface bodies up here, we have our all of our items in here that we've seen before. We have 7 now out of 8 features. And we actually need to rename our surface trim number 2 and call that our oil pan trim 2. So if you do that, you can see it actually changes to up here on our in our surface bodies folder. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 features, surface features with only 7 surface bodies. So some of these are merged into the other ones. We're going to actually decrease that by 1 more when we use our knit surface option up here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to knit surface. Let's create our selections. We're going to go ahead and click on that selection and that selection. We don't necessarily need to merge entities because we don't have any co-radial or coplanar items in here. And we're not going to try to form a salad out of this because we have other surfaces to contend with, to consider. So we're just going to go to the green check mark, and you'll remember that the blue line that used to be in here is now going to be black. So let's go back to our original model or our completed model. Let's make sure we call that the same thing. It's going to be our oil pan knit. So slowly click on surface knit over here and call that our oil pan knit. And that should do it. So one last bit of house cleaning before we leave this lesson. Let's go ahead and create the folder that we have created in our completed model. Let's go ahead and put that into our lesson model. And, well, why? Why would we do that, you might ask? One reason is that it makes your feature manager design tree nice and compact, and 2, it helps organize your feature manager design tree where you can put all these like items into one folder so you can easily access it. So when we go back to the original model, if you look at the folder that has back items in it, which you have are 19 features inside of that thing, but when you have one single folder, it takes those 19 features and condenses it into one line instead of 19 lines. A little bit easier to navigate. So the way you do that is you can take any of the item and the whatever feature you want here. Typically the top one, you want to right click on it. You want to go to the option down here where it says add to new folder. And it's almost off the bottom of the screen. Sorry about that, but it's called add to new folder. And what that does is it gives you the ability to go ahead and rename that folder. We're going to call that oil pan items. And what you want to do next is go ahead and open that folder, scroll down a little bit, and you want to take each one of these items and put them in consecutively as they are right now. So all you have to do is just move the mouse just a little bit and put it inside of that folder. If you take that folder, open and close it, by going on to the plus sign or the minus sign, you can see the advantages. It's taking all 5 of those items and putting them into that one folder. So I think that's enough for this lesson. Make sure you do save your work and join me in our next lesson where we will continue to create more surface features for our engine housing.